It all starts at the top. By the way, we did this one last year after 1 year of all these players, and things have changed. So last year at this time, I'll say that a lot, when we were talking Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, it looked like a complete, man, how could the Panthers possibly make that decision? But that's what they did. Number 1 overall, they went with Bryce Young, and it wasn't crazy at the time. Last year at this time, there was probably some revisionist history, right? How could they make the wrong pick? How could they choose Bryce Young over CJ Stroud? And by the way, Texans fans, I'm not declaring Bryce Young overtaking CJ Stroud in the competition here for who's the best quarterback. I have made the statement, though, the last 10, 12 games or whatever, I think Bryce Young outplayed CJ Stroud last year. But number 1 was Bryce Young. Number 2 was CJ Stroud. Let's start with Bryce and what we've seen so far here, Sam.
Yeah, and of course, remember also, it's not just they took him number 1, but they made the trade to go get him, right? This was Chicago's pick to begin with. And then Carolina made the giant trade to go up and get their quarterback of the future at number 1 overall. So you're factoring not just, who did they pick at number 1 overall, but what did they give up to go and get him? And that, as you said, is certainly part of the analysis a year ago was sort of like, well, Bryce Young is what he is, but this is the cautionary tale for trading up to go get a quarterback. You have to give up so much that you basically can't put a team around him, because part of the trade to go get Bryce Young was giving up DJ Moore, who was, the number 1 wide receiver in Carolina. So that's part of this whole analysis as well. And then, yeah, you get the actual debate itself, which is which QB should have gone 1 overall. Again, with hindsight, we always had Bryce Young as QB1, basically pillar to post in that draft class. But it was kind of a chaotic one, right? There was Bryce Young, CJ Stroud. There were a lot of people that had Stroud as QB1. And certainly after a year, that looked like by far the best analysis that Stroud was the best guy all along. I think primarily the people that had that were people that just didn't like the idea that a 5'10" quarterback, that's built like Bryce Young could be a number 1 overall pick type of player. It was sort of like, look, I'm willing to bend the rules a little bit now with evidence of Russell Wilson and, some of these smaller quarterbacks, but let's not take it too far, right? If we've got an alternative option, let's still go for the guy with prototypical size and, who isn't built like a twig. And let's assume that that's going to work. The one thing I think that has changed in the last 12 months is that analysis is just no longer valid. We can still debate, should you have gone Bryce Young, CJ Stroud number 1, but that idea that you just can't play at a really high level if you're built like Bryce Young is already gone, right? Whether he'll do it or not, kind of irrelevant. But we've seen for half a season now, you can not just play at the NFL level, but you can play and you can ball out at 5'10", 180 pounds.
But those criticisms looked warranted for the first year, plus the first 2 starts of last season. I remember, so we were trying to figure out, okay, what does year 1 of Bryce Young look like? What does it look like historically, both from a production standpoint for rookie quarterbacks, and then just from, I thought like a feel standpoint. Say, I thought Tua for the first couple of years felt like he didn't have a great arm, felt a little slight, felt like he just didn't have NFL tools. And then he gets the Mike McDaniel offense. He plays with extra special anticipation. They're not running RPOs left and right, and you played to Tua's skill set, and it looked better. I thought Bryce Young had elements of that, where the size did feel like an issue. The arm felt like an issue. He just wasn't, looking like an NFL caliber quarterback. And then he didn't have what we loved coming out of Bama, was the anticipation. And I loved his natural playmaking, whether it was in the pocket, outside the pocket. I thought he had this great feel for making plays. I think we saw very, very little of that his rookie season. And that started to come out in year 2. So last year at this time, very concerned. And in the production comps we were trying to figure out, was like, all right, Jared Goff, his rookie season, it was limited. He didn't start playing until about week 12, but it was awful. And not just for the quarterback, right? A lot of this is situation driven. Jared Goff's situation was poor. The supporting cast, the run game, the pass game, the play calling, it was all bad. Bryce Young was in that bucket. Everything seemed off from a supporting cast standpoint and from a just him playing standpoint. We looked at Derek Carr, who I don't think looked awful as a rookie, just wasn't really productive. Matthew Stafford had some bumps. So we were going back and finding all of the people who came out of it. And of course, there were bad rookie seasons like Blaine Gabbert and Zach Wilson and players through the years who never figured it out and just looked bad. So it's like, all right, in year 2, one of these two trajectories is going to happen for Bryce Young. He's either just going to be bad or, maybe he comes out of it. And then 2 weeks of the season happens and it's like, dude, this is worse. Yeah. This looks worse. He can't see the middle of the field. He's not feeling anything. He's forcing it. He looks messed up, right? Like everything's off. They bench him and he comes back and he looks completely different. And not to the tune statistically, right? How many games did we come in on a Monday morning and say, I know he threw for 150 yards, but that was a really good game by Bryce Young. So I think everything did turn around last year, and the Panthers should be optimistic heading into year 3 for Bryce Young.
All right, that's enough of that, Steve. Over 50% of the people listening to this are not subscribed right now. So click that button, and then we can get back to whatever it is Steve's telling you about. Yeah, I mean, let's sort of recap. He was benched basically because they had no other choice. Like, they did not want to bench Bryce Young. Certainly coming into the season, everything was optimistic. Like, this time a year ago, we were actually, we were pessimistic because it was one of the worst rookie seasons we've seen from a quarterback, but optimistic because everything around him had gotten better. They'd brought in Dave Canales, who had this track record of improving quarterbacks. The offensive line was the one thing that had actually come together already. The wide receiver core was theoretically upgraded on paper with, Xavier Legette coming in and et cetera, et cetera. So, like, we looked at that situation and said, all right, Bryce Young was horrific as a rookie, and not many quarterbacks have come out of that kind of season as bad as it was and become good players down the line. But the situation around him is great, so we expect better from him this year. And then 2 weeks in, you're like, oh, no, this is even worse. Like, he's done. Like, he can't play. They have to sit him down. He played his way to the bench. And when they benched him, it wasn't like, let's this is the pathway to rescue him. It was like, we just don't have another choice. At this point, he's probably not going to work out, right? Like, the idea that he would be benched, rejuvenate, bounce back later in the season like that. I mean, it was always within the range of possible outcomes, but it wasn't a likely thing. It was like, he's probably done already as an NFL quarterback. And then later in the season, he comes back in and immediately just looks different. It was like he had been reset by the time on the sideline, clicked into gear, and almost everything was good from that point on. And some of it was very, very good. So such an amazing roller coaster ride to go from horrific rookie season, even worse first couple of games of his second season, basically written off, benched, effectively your own organization is almost publicly saying, we no longer believe that you're the guy that's going to get it done. And then later in the season, they go back to him because what the hell? And he immediately turns it around and looks like a different quarterback. And now, as you said, we have legitimate optimism, not just maybe the situation is around him is better so he can play better. It's like, if he just keeps playing the way he's playing right now, he's on track to being a really good NFL quarterback.
Yeah, he absolutely is. And look, it wasn't part of our really bad concerns coming out of weeks 1 and 2, where he graded in the 30s from PFF. We were like, man, it's not the offensive line, right? We try to be as objective as possible here, Sam. When the offensive line's bad and that affects the quarterback, we say it. The first 2 weeks, the offensive line wasn't that bad for the Panthers. He was making them look bad, and he was still struggling. That was an even bigger concern. So I think the line was better last year. But when you look at his playmaker situation, it's not like, oh, man, it was the receivers carrying him. He had David Moore. He had Jalen Coker, undrafted rookie. He had Adam Thielen, who did look good, but is getting older. It wasn't the playmakers. That's what I'm most impressed at. And then when I saw Bryce Young making plays in the red zone, going head-to-head with the Chiefs, going head-to-head with the Eagles, and probably should have led the game-winning drive against the Eagles if Xavier Legette doesn't drop a would-be touchdown. Those were the types of things. Again, optimism for the Panthers because of how things went down in the second half last year.
Just repeat that, though. Like the Eagles, the Eagles that blew the doors off the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl. Bryce Young probably should have beaten the Philadelphia Eagles late in the season. Like, this is the level he was playing at. And the last point there is the combination between Bryce Young and his head coach, Dave Canales. Like, earlier in the season, it didn't look like in those first couple of games. Now, Young was non-functional, so I don't know if there's anything Canales could have done to make that better. But late in the season, the play calling, it looked like he had a much better understanding of how to play to the strengths of Bryce Young, like how to actually get the most out of him, got him on the move, minimize some of these areas that he was struggling with earlier in the season. That combination looks a lot better now as well. So what I think was justifiably an optimistic positive heading into last season is an even bigger one with evidence now heading into this season. Like, it didn't quite work the way we thought it would earlier in the season, but by the end of the year, it definitely did. The one question, though, so with all this evidence now, did the Panthers make the right call at the top of this draft, right? Was Bryce Young the guy that should have been QB1 with all that we know now between both his couple of years and CJ Stroud's couple of years? Because there were reports, right, that actually Houston wanted Bryce Young number 1 overall as well. And they had kind of got lucky by the fact that Carolina went and got Bryce Young, and the booby prize, the consolation prize for Houston, was actually the better quarterback for at least the first year and a half.
I think with hindsight, I still probably would have taken Bryce Young. I mean, I was fine with Bryce Young, so I'm not ready to completely say, oh, Steve, you were way off. If I had, knowing what I know now, though, I'd probably take CJ Stroud over Bryce Young. I think CJ Stroud has shown a bit more than Bryce Young overall. But let me just, look, I know we're going to spend a lot of time on this. Let me just rehash really quick what happens in football, what happens in the NFL. It's not as clean as the shouty shows would make it. Who's the GOAT? This is the guy. He's the best. He's the worst, right? It doesn't work that way. I always go back to the 2016 NFL draft where Jared Goff went number 1, Carson Wentz went number 2, Dak Prescott went in the 4th round. And you say, who's the best quarterback out of that group? Well, in 2016, I'll tell you who was. In 16, it was Wentz. In 17, it was, in 16, it was Dak. In 17, it was Wentz. In 18, it was Goff. In 19, it was Dak, I think. In 20, it was Goff, right? It just rotated. And, okay, at the end of that career, it's like, all right, well, Carson Wentz may have had the best peak of any of those guys. Dak has probably had the best career, but Goff has been the most consistent. I mean, all right, what's the answer, right? So I'm looking at it like, I don't know, Stroud might have the best ceiling now, which usually is attached to pick number 4, Anthony Richardson. Stroud might have the best ceiling, but Bryce Young might. There's going to be years where Bryce Young might be better than CJ Stroud. But if I had to say right now, I think CJ Stroud will have more good years, say, than Bryce Young.
It's just fascinating because at draft time, we both thought that Bryce Young should have been QB1. I thought it was reasonably comfortable at that time. 12 months in, you would say complete 180. Like, it's easily CJ Stroud. Even if you still have confidence that Bryce Young can turn it around, what we've seen from Stroud looks special. He's obviously QB1 from this draft class. And then 12 months in advance again, and you're like, all right, the body of work for Stroud has been better than Bryce Young at this point in the NFL. But what Bryce Young showed late in the season, like, that looks like it could be even better than what we've seen from Stroud, perhaps. So I think you're right. Like, on the balance of everything, you probably say Stroud should be QB1. But like, if you were, if you're a gambling man, you'd certainly look at what we saw from Bryce Young and be like, man, I like that bet. Like, I'm not cashing this in yet. I'm not taking the payout. I'm going to wait and see how this bet pays off.
A lot's changed in 12 months, and it's been fun. I'm glad. I mean, both quarterbacks have looked very good in various stretches in their career.
Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
For more great content, click here to subscribe and here to watch another video. We'll see you again soon.